So, Egypt is facing a massive decision. I mean, one that could totally redefine its place in the Middle East for years to come. The choice? Whether to join this controversial new council that's set to decide the entire future of Gaza. We're going to unpack the huge, high-stakes gamble that Cairo is making.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to break this whole thing down into 5 key pieces. First, we'll look at what this so-called Peace Council actually is. Then, we'll dive into the really strong arguments for saying yes and the equally powerful reasons for saying no. After that, we'll compare the 2 totally different visions for Gaza's future. And finally, we'll figure out what Cairo's ultimate strategic bet really is.
So, first things first, what exactly is this Board of Peace? It's suddenly become the new center of gravity for the entire region, so we need to know what we're dealing with.
Basically, you can think of the Board of Peace, or the BOP, as a brand new kind of transitional government for Gaza. Now yeah, it was created by a UN resolution, but here's the catch. It's designed to work with a level of independence that has a lot of people, well, a little nervous. It's a whole new player in the world stage, and that's exactly what makes it so controversial.
All right, now take a look at this power structure. It's a classic top-down setup, no surprise there. Right at the top, you've got Donald Trump and Marco Rubio calling the shots and setting the big picture agenda. But look a little closer, down at the operational level. That's where Egypt fits in. They get 1 seat for one of their generals, and that single seat is what this whole debate is all about.
So knowing that's the structure, why on earth would Egypt agree to join? Well, this decision wasn't just made on a whim. For Cairo, it all came down to a pretty cold calculation of 3 absolutely critical national interests: security, money, and just plain old diplomatic reality.
Okay, so here's the thing you have to understand. For Egypt, what happens in Gaza isn't some distant foreign policy issue. It's a direct threat to their national security. Their absolute #1 red line is stopping a mass movement of Palestinians into their Sinai Peninsula. Then there's the economy. The conflict has cost them billions in lost money from the Suez Canal, so joining the board is a way to maybe get some of that back. And finally, you've got rivals like Turkey and Qatar sitting at the table. Egypt just couldn't risk being the one left out in the hallway.
And, money talks. A huge piece of this puzzle is this number, over $1.4 billion in U.S. aid. Since most of that is for the military, cooperating on the Board of Peace starts to look like a very smart investment.
And it's not just the US we're talking about. The EU is also bringing a massive €7.4 billion financing package to the table. So by positioning itself as this key stabilizing player, Egypt is really cashing in big time.
But, and this is a big but, not everyone in Egypt was cheering about this. In fact, you had a really powerful chorus of voices arguing that joining this council would be a historic, massive mistake. Let's dig into why.
You had prominent voices, like the journalist Ibrahim Essa, who were totally against it. His point was that President Sisi has spent years building a reputation for standing up to American pressure. So joining a board chaired by Donald Trump? To him, that would turn Egypt from a strategic partner into just an errand boy for American policy. It would throw away decades of hard-won independence.
And then there's the price of admission. Get this, $1 billion just for a permanent seat at the table. For the critics, this was basically a flashing sign that the board was a lot less about peace and a lot more about profit.
But the deepest fear here wasn't really about money or politics. It was about morality. The nightmare scenario, the one that kept people up at night, was that Egypt would become an accomplice in a plan to basically turn Gaza into some kind of luxury resort for foreign investors, built right on top of the ruins of Palestinian homes.
So this whole back and forth, this accept or refuse dilemma, it really comes down to the clash between 2 completely different blueprints for what Gaza should become.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's night and day. On one side, you have the Egyptian plan. It's a $53 billion 5-year project focused on social stability, prioritizing the basics, water, hospitals, things people actually need. Then you look at the US-backed Project Sunrise. It's a $112 billion 20-year vision of a high-tech luxury city. And look at the roles. In its plan, Egypt is the main builder. In Project Sunrise, its job is basically just to manage the border.
And this right here, this is the elephant in the room. Where are 2 million people supposed to go while their city is being rebuilt for 20 years? The fact that Project Sunrise just doesn't have an answer to that question is, for a lot of people, all the proof they need that this isn't a reconstruction plan, it's a depopulation plan.
So you can see the dilemma, right? Stuck between a rock and a hard place, needing to be involved, but terrified of what that could mean. So Egypt's final decision wasn't a simple yes or no. It was a calculated strategic gamble. The way they saw it in Cairo, the risk of not being in the room was actually way bigger than the risk of joining. If they said no, they'd lose all control over their own border, they'd be sidelined economically, and they'd have to just stand by and watch something like Project Sunrise happen. So the conclusion was pretty clear. It's better to be inside the room where you can influence things, even if you don't like the room. But look, just because they're in doesn't mean they're just going to go along with everything. For this gamble to actually pay off, Egypt has to play its cards very carefully. It's what you might call a strategy of critical participation. This means using their seat to push their own plan for reconstruction, to make sure the international security force is working for their interests, to keep insisting the UN Security Council has the final say, and yeah, to negotiate the heck out of that billion-dollar fee.
And that's where we're left, with this massive, high-stakes question. Can Egypt actually pull it off? Can it get inside this new power structure and turn what some people are calling an American-led project into a real tool for stability in the region? Or is Cairo about to find itself trapped in a great powers game, totally unable to stop the very things it joined the board to prevent? The future of Gaza and Egypt's place in the world is really hanging in the balance.